On everybody, it's your boy Manny here once again. Welcome back to DFS Zone. Week 2 NFL is here, and we're going to discuss today. I got a brand new video for you guys. We're going to discuss today the best possible plays at quarterback. And before I get started, man, I appreciate you guys smash that like button. Let's try to get 100 likes on this video today. Really truly appreciate it. It does help the channel. It does also helps me stay motivated to be able to give you the best possible content, the best possible information for you to be successful at DFS on a daily and weekly basis. All right, I know we have a lot of new viewers transitioning over from WNBA. I got my viewers from WNBA being very supportive. I'm sure they're watching, and at the same time we have a lot of new DFS players as well as NFL DFS players looking to get as much possible information from as many individuals as they possibly can. What are you going to get here at DFS Zone? Well, like I tell people at the very beginning, the most important thing is that I'm going to give you what I think are the best plays in every position every single week, and pretty much that information is coming out of all statistical data. In this case now, this early on in the year is going to come out of last year. It's going to come out of the head-to-head as far as historically how well a player has done against a particular defense and a particular opponent, as well as last week's statistics. And of course, as we move along in the first couple of weeks of the season, we're going to get a better gauge of where everybody's at as far as offensively and defensively. Okay, and the reason I do that is because that's just the way I am. I mean, I am not going to do DFS. I've been playing for a while, and I'm not going to be doing DFS without doing really some good, thorough due diligence on research and getting the best possible plays. So that's what you're going to basically get here, the best possible plays on statistical data, as well as head-to-head, and of course matchup. How do they match up well against a particular opponent? And I know that the new DFS players, you know, is so important that you want to be able to have options. You're never going to get here me telling you I'm going to give you these 7-8 plays and, you know, give it a shot, because there's two different platforms that most people play in. DK as well. DK stands for DraftKings, as well as FanDuel. I play mostly on FanDuel, but I do have DK account. I do play NFL DFS there on DK. I've been doing it for over 3 years, pretty much close to 3 years now. So the bottom line is that I know that a lot of newbies are going to be in either one of the two platforms. If I'm going to go ahead and make videos for both, it's going to be a little bit long. It's going to be just people are going to get bored. They're not going to want to be on here for an hour and a half listening to me as far as what I think are the best plays at DraftKings and FanDuel. So what you're going to get is I'm going to give you 3 or 4 plays, and they are basically the best 3 or 4 plays for the entire slate, either on DK or FanDuel. And what I recommend is, if you play on both like I do, you may want to fade one of the two platforms in a given week, depending on matchups and how the price ranges vary from player in both platforms. And probably if you can create the best lineup that is suitable for you for the amount of money in a particular platform, if it happens to be DK, then fade FanDuel, or vice versa. If you think the lineups work well with the plays that I give you, if you can formulate and put a team together and a nice lineup on FanDuel and it works for you and you're comfortable and confident about it, then you fade DK. I'd be able to give you, out of 3 or 4, you should be able to make lineups in both platforms if you wish to play in both platforms, which I normally do. So give it a shot and see what happens. But basically, that is it, man. I want people to understand that I am not going to leave you out with just a few plays. And also, I have a live show. The live show is on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. I stood on over 2 hours last week discussing, getting to know a number of new DFS players and a number of new players actually watching me for the first time. So it's a good place to interact. It's a good way for us to go over the slate. I'm discussing quarterbacks today. I do like about 6 or 7 quarterbacks, but I'm going to give you 4 good solid plays at quarterback today. And the other 2 or 3, I'm going to do a little bit more due diligence on those. And by Saturday, I'm going to be able to let you know if there's a possibility of another possible great play for us here at DFS Zone as a community, because I always consider that community first. So join the family if you have not subscribed and you want to be able to get the best possible information on a weekly basis and on a daily basis when NBA comes in, because I do NBA as well. I recommend you highly you subscribe down below. Make sure you put on your post notifications, and this way you do not miss any of my new videos or the live show on Saturday. All right, guys? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into the actual slate. We have a large slate. Another thing that I want to break down and give a tip to, especially for the new viewers, is that with a large slate like this, I normally like to pay down at quarterback. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again because there's probably new viewers this week. And the reason for that is that I'd rather pay up in the running back position as well as the receiver. Now, very important tip for those is that remember, PPR comes into play in DraftKings, not so much here on FanDuel. FanDuel is a half a point per reception. You get a full point on DK. So what I recommend, what that basically means is that receivers are important, or dual threat running backs. Like I mentioned last week, I love dual threat running backs and I love dual threat quarterbacks. And the dual threat running backs come into play for the PPR. So you got to consider guys like Kamara, guys like Melvin Gordon, guys like Kareem Hunt. These individual players like this, they basically get their touches. Not only they could beat you with the run, but they also beat you with the pass. They get touches in both areas. And those are the kind of players that you want to gauge and really target depending on their matchups on DK as well as on FanDuel, but on DK more so because of the PPR. All right, on FanDuel is a different story. You will probably target those players who are the best possible play at that flex position. Okay, in the flex position, you want to target the best possible play. If it means that the best value is going to come out of running back, then I would say you get those 2 running backs and then get that flex position. Try to narrow down another running back, and especially a dual threat running back if you can. Other than that, you definitely go receiver if the slate is showing more value at receiver. All right, sorry about that. Okay, guys, so let's dive in, man. I know it took a little bit of just to get some stuff out of the way. All right, so we got here on the slate here on FanDuel. Drew Brees is the top quarterback this week. I had him last week. I told you last week I had Drew Brees. He was the top stud for me as far as the higher tier quarterbacks. And then I also gave you guys Blake Bortles and I also gave you guys Andy Dalton. And all 3 quarterbacks did well. Dalton and Bortles won their games respectively. Drew Brees' defense let him down. Fitzpatrick had a monster game, and unfortunately Drew Brees, even though he put up beautiful numbers, he ended up getting a loss. I don't expect that to happen this week. He is going to be I'm going to go back to the well on Drew Brees this week. I think this week New Orleans defense finally comes together. They're going to play a better game, and Drew Brees is going to get himself an opportunity to not only play very well, but also put himself in position to win. Drew Brees last year, just in case you guys didn't hear me last week, he's in at 8,800. First things first, that's pretty expensive, but he is a good fine play here. Out of the top studs this week, I think he is the best play. On DK, he's 7,200, so you're going to have a $1,600 discount on DK. So I think he's definitely in a good spot if you really want to pay up at quarterback. Like I said before, I don't normally pay up for quarterbacks, but I'm trying to give you the best play. So it's always going to probably be one stud. And this week, I definitely like Drew Brees again. So at 8,800, last year he had 386 out of 536 completions. He completed 386 out of 536 attempts, 72% completion ratio with 23 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, which is fantastic. 271 yards per game on average. After last week, last year he also averaged about 16.5 FanDuel fantasy points and 17.1 DK points. This year after his first game this year, 37 out of 45 last week, monster game, 82% completion ratio, 439 yards, 3 touchdowns, put up 31.6 FanDuel points and 34.6 DraftKings points. So he's really, really high to start the year. I think he's probably not going to get close to 31 this week, but he's definitely going to get 20 or better, which is a fantastic FanDuel fantasy point totals for you guys. His home and away splits last year, obviously pretty darn good too as well. 72% completion ratio at 193 out of 269. He had 284.8 yards per game average with 12 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He was actually very, very good and efficient in the red zone as well last season. 56 out of 82, 67% completion ratio, 308 yards and 17 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. So that's a very nice ratio of touchdowns to interceptions. Inside the 10, he was just as efficient, 67% completion ratio, 22 of 31, 88 yards, 12 TDs, 0 interceptions. Thus far this year, after 1 week, 7 of 11 in the inside the red zone, 7 of 11, 64% completion ratio, 49 yards, 2 touchdowns. Inside the 10, even better, 75% completion ratio, 3 out of 4, 19 yards, 2 TDs. So, I mean, those numbers look fantastic to me. He's going up against Cleveland. Last year, their passing defense, and last year, I mean, we're talking about last year's stats because we're going to base it on last year's stats as well as this season progresses. 19th in pass defense last year, 230 yards per game given up to opponents, 28 TDs. The 28 TDs was the 6th most in the NFL. 7 interceptions, All right. They gave up to quarterbacks also 58 carries for 179 yards and 4 touchdowns. They averaged the quarterbacks, opponent quarterbacks averaged 19 DK points on average per week against Cleveland and 18.6 FanDuel points. The FanDuel points was the 6th most in the National Football League last year, and DK points was the 7th most. After 1 week this year, they're right now currently 28th after the first week of the season in pass defense. They gave up 313 yards to the Steelers last week, only 1 TD. They did get 3 interceptions. All right, 17 DK points on DraftKings and 12 here on FanDuel. They also going up dead last year in the red zone. Cleveland was scoring. Opponents scored 67.3% of the time in the red zone. So I mean, I'm just right now. I just think this is a great matchup. Drew Brees is in a perfect position to also throw for over 300 yards, going on against a very poor pass defense in Cleveland. He, to me, is probably the best play of the week. Aaron Rodgers being hurt, Tom Brady in a tough matchup, and not only Rodgers being hurt, but also Minnesota being a very, very tough defense. That's a tough matchup for Aaron Rodgers as well. So I think out of the top-tier quarterbacks, he's in the best position. Maybe Cam Newton second. My next guy in play here, man, is Patrick Mahomes. I love Patrick Mahomes. I told you last week, if you listened to my video, that I was gonna fade him simply because I wanted to see the kid perform a couple of games. Well, he impressed me in game 1 already. I mean, he's in here. He's coming in at 7,500 on DK. He's 6,100. Dual threat quarterbacks. You know I love these guys. This guy can beat you with his arm. He's got a cannon of an arm. Not only that, he can run with the ball and throw on the run so well. And he can also beat you with running the ball, tucking it in, and just making things happen. So Patrick Mahomes definitely in play in a matchup against Pittsburgh. Now, granted, Ben Roethlisberger is in a good position here as well. But Big Ben, I mean, I think he's slipping, man. He is definitely going down the opposite way. I am not on Ben Roethlisberger. I've never really been a big Ben Roethlisberger fan, but I respect the guy. He has done very well in his career, but I think he's declining. And I think this week, Patrick Mahomes, especially the Pittsburgh had their troubles with a mobile quarterback last week, with giving up over 77 yards they gave up. Yeah, 77 yards on 8 carries to Tyrod Taylor. This kid is more dangerous. You know, he's more dangerous just even with his arm. Pittsburgh's defense is not too bad. But again, let's get back to Patrick a little bit here. So Patrick Mahomes, dual threat quarterback, like I told you guys, 55% completion last week in his first game. 15 of 27, 256 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He put up 28.3 fantasy points, as you can see here on FanDuel, and he put up the same on DK. He rushed also for 5 rushes for 21 yards and 4 yards a carry, which is excellent. And he also went up against hasn't played against Pittsburgh. That's the most important thing coming in there. He hasn't played against Pittsburgh, so we got to give him the benefit of the doubt. Seems to have a great connection with Tyreek Hill. With Tyreek Hill, they just went off last week. I really want to see how he can get himself going in getting Travis Kelce going. He targeted him 6 times, only got 1 reception. I'd definitely like to see him hook up with Kelce. Kelce is also in a great spot here. Pittsburgh is not that good defending against tight ends. Gave up about 7, 8 touchdowns to tight ends last year. So definitely Kansas City in a good spot. Another thing also is that Kansas City, man, like I said last week, as I was favoring Tyreek Hill, and I had mentioned also Kareem Hunt, who had a poor game. I wasn't on Mahomes last week. I wish I was, because he went off with Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill did well. But the bottom line here is that you're going up against Pittsburgh. We know the Kansas City is an offensive-minded team. This team puts up points. They got a lot of weapons. So I really, really like this whole idea of them going up against Pittsburgh. I don't care if Pittsburgh's at home. We know Pittsburgh's a good team at home. But I think that Pittsburgh is going to have to really step up on defense. I think the whole Le'Veon Bell thing is also distracting this team a little bit. It may not, maybe I'm wrong, but possibly. I mean, granted, they didn't lose last week. It was a tie game against Cleveland, but they didn't look good. Obviously, the weather was not good as well in Cleveland, so we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But I think they're going to have a tough go with this kid. You know, in the red zone, this kid last year, small sample, only had 5 attempts, completed 3, 60% completion ratio and 22 yards. This year, in that one game on Sunday, 3 of 5 as well, 60% completion, 18 yards, 2 TDs. Inside the 10, 67% completion ratio, had 3 attempts, made 2 completions, 2 yards, 2 TDs. So he's 100% on 2 opportunities in the red zone, inside the 10, both times scoring TDs. I like those ratios already to start the year. I know it's very early, it's a small sample, but definitely love where he's at. He's going up against Pittsburgh. You know, Pittsburgh last year, man. I mean, another thing also to point out here, last year, this past week, they faced the Chargers, and I was a little concerned with him with the Chargers simply because the Chargers were pretty good last year. They had 43 sacks last year, and the Kansas City offense held them to only 1 sack, and that is pretty impressive. We know Pittsburgh is a good defense, especially up front. They're able to get a lot of sacks. They got 7 last week, I think, or so. So they had a, you know, but then again, that is Cleveland. I think Kansas City, that's the one area that I'm a little concerned with is not getting sacks. But I think Patrick Mahomes, with his feet, is going to be able to escape those opportunities for Pittsburgh to get sacks, and I think he's going to do very well on the open field. When we go as far as Pittsburgh's concerned, man, in 2017, like I mentioned, they were 5th in pass defense, which is pretty darn good, 201 yards per game. They gave up only 20 touchdowns, 16 interceptions they recouped out. They were very good on defense, 56 sacks. That was the best in the NFL. They only gave up to quarterbacks 15.5 DK points last year on average, and on FanDuel 14.8. But so far in 2018, they are now 6th in defense. They just only gave up 150 yards last week in passing. I think this week is going to be a little bit more just simply because of the weapons Kansas City has. But 1 TD, 1 interception. They did have 7 sacks like I mentioned before. But again, they were facing Cleveland, all right? They also, this past week, with Cleveland, giving up those 7 yards. Remember, Tyrod Taylor had a 15 for 40 bad percentage, completion percentage last week, but he did very well with his feet. He had 8 carries, 77 yards, 1 touchdown. I expect Mahomes to do better than that. 24.6 DK points, most in the league to start the season versus quarterbacks. All right, and they're going up against Mr. Mahomes that put up 28.5 last week. So I kind of like those odds going with Mahomes, who had a very good week going into Pittsburgh and hopefully shaking things up over there. In the red zone, Pittsburgh in 2017, they were 31st in the league. 66% of the time the offenses got their opponents got in the red zone, they actually scored a TD, and they're at 66% after week 1 of 2018, 66.6%, and they gave up also TDs last week to Cleveland. So I love Patrick Mahomes here. I think he's going to be a very surprising play this week, man. I really think that he has a good shot here to do very, very well. So I'm on him. We'll discuss it even more so on Saturday night on the live show. There are a couple other guys here you can consider. Cousins may be a good play. I'll look into it a little bit further. Goff. My next guy online here is Deshaun Watson. I love Deshaun Watson as a dual threat quarterback. He's going up against Tennessee. Granted, he didn't have a good week last week. He had a 50% completion ratio last week against New England. Little tough matchup. New England definitely looked better, but he didn't play as well either. I think he's going to bounce back. This is a bounce back game for Deshaun Watson. It's early in the year. Houston doesn't want to fall 0-2 in the season. They want to really compete. They definitely need to at least get a win here, and they're in a favorable matchup where they can do that. Deshaun Watson 7,400 on DK, 6,300, so you can save 1,100 on DK. I think he's a fantastic play. 17 of 34 last week, 50% completion ratio, 176 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception. He had also 8 rushes for 40 yards, 5 yards per carry. Only had 12 fantasy points here and 13 on DK. These teams played last year, and Deshaun Watson lit up Tennessee. Okay, they did it in Houston though, but they lit them up at Houston last year. 57-14 was the final of that game. Deshaun Watson had 25 of 34, 73% completion percentage, 283 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He also rushed 4 for 24 with 1 touchdown as well. In the red zone in that game, he was 4 of 6. This is how efficient he was. 4 of 6 in the red zone, 42 yards, 4 touchdowns. He also rushed in the red zone 2 times for 5 yards and 1 TD. He put up a massive 34.7 fantasy points in that game. His home and away splits last year, 56 of 87 on the road, 64% completion percentage. He played minimal games, as you know, because he had the injury. 828 yards, 6 TDs. He averaged 276 yards per game in those 2 or 3 games that he had on the road. So he played very well on the road. Was not at all phase with being out on the road. 6 touchdowns, like I said, he had a quarterback rating of 94. His rushing last year in the minimal games he played also very, very good. Excellent. 21 rushes last year, 175 yards, 1 touchdown, 8.3 yards per carry. That is crazy, nearly 9 yards a carry. Inside the 20 in the red zone, very good as well. 56%, not a high number. Would love it to be over 60%, but 56%, 15 of 27, 110 yards, 13 TDs, did have 2 interceptions. He also rushed 3 times for 6 yards, also had a TD. Inside the 10, he was even better. His completion percentage went up a whole almost 30%. 83% completion ratio inside the 10. He was 10 of 12, 52 yards, 10 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He also rushed 2 times for 2 yards and 1 touchdown. This kid is very, very explosive. I loved him in college, as I'm a big college fan as well. And he's going to have a great game. This is a bounce-back game for Deshaun Watson, man. I really think you guys should pencil him in. He's going up against Tennessee. Last year, Tennessee was 25th in the league in passing, 239 yards. All right, they gave up 27 touchdowns. That was the 8th most in the NFL. Okay, they also gave up 43 sacks last year as well. All right, 8th most in the NFL as far as TDs. DK points, 19 to quarterbacks last year. 19 DK points right on the nose, and 17.8 fantasy points per game in FanDuel to quarterbacks last season. So far, thus far, after 1 game this year, Tennessee 13th in defense, 222 yards, 2 TDs. They did get 2 interceptions this week, but again, that was against Miami and against Ryan Tannehill. This is not Deshaun Watson, okay? This week they gave up 17.5 fantasy points and 17.5 fantasy points at quarterback on FanDuel as well. All right, we know he has crazy upside. This kid can get you 30 on any given day if everything is going right, but he can definitely get you 20 or better. So I believe he's going to get 20 or better this week. I think he's good for 20 to 22 DK or FanDuel points this week. In the red zone, Tennessee struggled a little bit last year. 2017 had 2 TDs. They were giving up 2 TDs per game in the red zone. 56% scoring percentage for opponents in the red zone. Thus far, after 1 game this year, Miami did have 5 attempts in the red zone, so they did look pretty good last week against Miami. But again, this is against Ryan Tannehill, and also Tannehill was pretty decent. Tannehill finished 20 of 28, 230 yards, 2 TDs against this defense. All right, 15.7 fantasy points by Ryan Tannehill. Deshaun Watson should crush over 20. He is much better player than Ryan Tannehill. All right, so I definitely love Mr. Deshaun Watson here. I think he is definitely in play, ladies and gentlemen. My next quarterback in line here, I like Rivers as well. I think Garoppolo may be a good play as well. I'm going to look into those guys a little bit further. But my next guy that I really like is Alex Smith. I think also in a very good spot here, going up against Indianapolis. Alex Smith, 7,100. He on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's 6K, so at $1,100 savings over there. Last week, he put up 19.6, as you can see here on the screen. Fantasy points versus Arizona. His 2017 stats was 269 yards per game, 67.5% completion ratio. He had 26 TDs, only 5 interceptions. He did even better as far as interception ratio to TDs than Drew Brees last year. All right, he had 60 rushes last year for 355 yards, 1 touchdown, 23.7 yards per game. And last week he was 21 of 30 with 70% completion ratio versus Arizona. 255 yards, 2 TDs, 0 interceptions, which is always nice to see. He also carried the ball 8 times for 14 yards. 19.6 DK points as well as fantasy points on FanDuel as well. 19.6 last week against Arizona. This is his first year with Washington, as we all know. So we're going to see how his home and away splits evolve as we go through the course of the season. In the red zone, it was pretty good last year. 33 of 71, 207 yards per game, 207 yards total, 13 TDs, 0 interceptions again. Inside the 10, he was 11 of 20, 50% completion ratio, 60 yards, 10 TDs, 0 interceptions. He was so good inside the 10 last year in the red zone. Definitely love him, Alex Smith there. 2018, thus far after 1 game, numbers are also decent here as well. 4 or 5 last week inside the 20, 80% completion ratio, 35 yards, 2 TDs. When he got in the red zone inside the 10, he was 1 of 1, 50%, 1 of 1, 100%, 4 yards, one touchdown. So he was very efficient last week in his game against Arizona. And this week he's got to go up against Indianapolis, which really don't have much of a defensive identity right now, at least in my opinion. 28th in pass defense last year, 247 yards per game, 23 TDs. Was tops in the league. 55 rushing attempts by quarterbacks last year on Indy, 199 yards and 3 touchdowns. They coughed up 19 DK points to quarterbacks last year per game and 17.8 fantasy points per game as well. This year, after one game, 21 of 28, 243 yards, pretty much almost the average of last year. 2 TDs, 1 interception, 17.5 DK points they gave up to the quarterback position last week, which was Andy Dalton, and 17.5 FanDuel points as well. They're also going up this week. Indianapolis in a tough spot. Obviously, they're going up against Alex Smith, and Alex Smith averaged 19.6 last week fantasy points, while they gave up 17. So I think he's in a favorable position to put up 19 or better this week against this weak defensive team. In the red zone, Indy last year, 2017, 15th in the league. 53% of the time the opponent scored in the red zone, at least a touchdown. And after 1 week this year, 100%. They're perfect, giving up. Cincinnati had 2 opportunities in the red zone inside the 20, and both times they scored a touchdown. So definitely looks like a dangerous spot for the Colts again this week with Alex Smith there. And I think Alex Smith and his team has a little bit, probably just a little bit better offense, in my opinion, in the Redskins. So it's going to be a pretty dangerous situation. I think he is in a fine position to do very well here in this matchup. And that's pretty much it. I do like, other than Alex Smith, I do like Case Keenum as well, and Tyrod Taylor. I will touch on those. Sam Darnold, I'm a New York Jet fan, by the way. I love what Sam Darnold did the other day. The Jets were fantastic against Detroit. I'm still going to wait a little bit on Sam Darnold to see where he goes over the next 2 or 3 weeks, but I think he has a position here. He's in a spot here where he can probably get 14 to 15 or 16 fantasy points as well this week, maybe even more, but we'll see how he evolves as we move further. I'm not on Blake Bortles. Tough matchup against New England. I think New England is a better improved defense this year as they did last year. They were 30th in the league in passing, and thus far this year they look pretty good against Deshaun Watson the other day on Sunday. But we'll see how that all comes into play with Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles is pretty good, pretty decent mobile quarterback, as well as willing to run the ball when he needs to. So we'll see how that pans out. But pretty much, guys, that is it for quarterbacks. I will be back with the running back video. It'll probably be up later on today because this video should have been up yesterday. So I have already worked on the running back situation. I will have the best plays there. But if you want to continue to get this great content, man, let's try to get 100 likes on this video. I really would appreciate it. It definitely helps the channel. It helps my ranking. It helps with the algorithms. You guys know the deal, man. A lot of work goes into this as far as, not only doing the research for myself, but like I said, I'm doing the research myself, and I'm actually sharing that research and that information as far as what are the best plays are for you, my viewers, and my audience as well. So let's be a family. Let's definitely build a great community here at DFS Zone, like I've done already with some NBA fans and viewers, as well as my WNBA people as well. And again, also, if you have not subscribed to the channel and you want to continue to get this content and you want to get it right on time, as soon as I put it up, you must subscribe to the channel, man. Smash that subscribe button, and right next to it, there's a little bell icon. Click on that and turn that on, because that's my post notifications. It will definitely notify you as soon as I put up a video. Not only that, the live shows as well, you don't want to miss. Saturday is the next one at 7 p.m. where we go over the slate again, and by then I'll be able to also tell you if I have made any decision changes on any of the plays that I've given you during the course of the week, as well as if there's anything new, especially if there's injury news or if there's been changes at a position, a starting position. All those will be talked about on the live show before lock, one day before lock, 7 p.m. right here at DFS Zone on YouTube. So with that, I give you guys, have a great day. God bless. And your boy Manny is out, man. Look for the next video, all right? Thank you.